everyone, and welcome to the Graceologie with Gwen Smith podcast. I'm Gwen Smith, and I'm so glad you've joined me today. Around here, we have fun, faith-focused, grace-filled conversations, all to help you know and trust God more. Our discussions are honest, often humorous, and always practical. And they're going to encourage you in meaningful ways to live out and lean on the grace of Jesus in the midst of cluttered, messy days. You got any of those? I know I do, and I can't wait to get to today's conversation, which is all about raising honorable, kind, and confident kids. My guest today is author and popular blogger Monica Swanson, who has a new book out called Boy Mom. Now, although Monica's book is focused on parenting your son today for the man that he'll become, the discussion that she and I have in this episode is relevant to all parents, grandparents, and influencers of children, so that should pretty much cover all of us. Listen, being a mom is loud, beautiful, and complicated, and it is an adventure for sure. Some days it feels as if you're raising creatures from another planet. Can I hear an amen? Other times you're left breathless at the wonder of who your child is becoming. The truth is, we all desperately want to raise our children or influence the children in our lives well. And there are tons of questions we face along the way. You know, questions like, how much screen time is too much? How do I know when my child is ready for more freedom? How can I help my child feel loved and secure? And how in the world is the fridge empty again already? I've asked that last question about 1 million times. Today, my conversation with Monica is filled with road-tested, real-world advice and insights that are blended with biblical wisdom and compelling research. And I'm confident this episode is going to give you some practical tools that you need to love your children well and to parent today with their future in mind. Before we head into the episode, I want to give a big Graceologie shout out by doing a listener highlight. Chase Taylor wrote, "Every time I listen to this podcast, God speaks directly to my heart in unexpected, amazing ways. The content is fresh, authentic, and practical, and it helps me cling to and live out my faith in a dark and ever-changing world. Thank you for pouring yourself into this ministry. I pay it forward by sharing parts of what I hear with others as he leads, and then I watch him move in their hearts and lives. Love it." Well, Chase, love you for sharing, and thank you so much for the 5-star rating. Let me just thank all of you who have left a rating of the show on iTunes or whatever podcast app you use. Ratings and reviews make a huge difference to those of us who are working hard to bring you these shows. Well, hello, Monica. Welcome to the Graceologie show today.
Well, aloha.
Aloha, my Hawaiian friend. Yay.
Yes. Yay.
Well, I'm excited to kind of introduce my community to you today. And, you know, on the front end of that, what we usually do around here is a Fast Fun Favorites round. So
I know that well.
Yay. So we're just going to get to know you in a fun kind of, you know, girlfriendy kind of way. So you
Right.
ready?
Oh, yeah. I told my boys to help prep me for your Fast and Furious round. That's what I called it. So we've been practicing.
That makes me happy.
I'm terrified.
Oh, it's all good. It'll be happy and easy. Okay.
Okay. Deep breaths. Yes. I'm ready.
You got this. Okay. Monica, sweet or salty?
Oh, man. Can you have both?
Yes,
Sweet and salty together.
Absolutely.
Maybe salty. I'll go salty.
Okay. That's what I am. Okay. What is your favorite 90s sitcom?
90s sitcom. Was The Office in the 90s?
No.
No, that wasn't. Oh, goodness. 90s sitcom must have been. Oh, I wasn't a big TV person. I don't know. I didn't really follow Friends. Sorry. I don't think I got a TV show in the 90s.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
What?
I watched Gilmore Girls later. Was that 90s? That wasn't either.
That was probably, in that 2000 to 2010
See,
window.
I was very busy in the 90s. Thank you.
Clearly, you had other things to do. That's fine.
Important things. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Monica, mascara or lip gloss?
Anything on my lips. My lips are a shade of blue if I don't cover them. So lips are a must.
I love it. Okay. What's your middle name?
Paige.
Nice. You were
Thanks.
Paige
I used
before.
to want people to call me Paige because I preferred that, but it never stuck.
Well, it's beautiful, Monica Page.
Thank
I
you.
love it. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Hula hoop or Chinese jump rope?
Oh, hula hoop.
Awesome. If you could invite any living person to be your dinner guest, who would it be?
Living person, dinner guest. Oh, let's go with, I think for my boys' sake, I want to have Tim Tebow over. My son's been reading all of his books, and I just think it'd be a really fun conversation, just thinking of my boys.
That is such a good answer.
Thanks.
That would be so fun.
It would.
Okay. Who is your favorite classic rock band?
Look at you. Okay, so we're kind of into like the old Christian rock from like the 70s.
Okay.
If we can count that. So
Okay.
my husband does a lot of like, is it even considered rock? I mean, definitely Keith Green isn't rock, but he's our favorite. We play him all the time. How about who's
Green is
rock
not
of the
rock.
70s? He's not. He's so not. I know. But I'm thinking Benny Hester, is that one? Rich Mullins, those aren't rock.
Okay,
those are just
Benny
70s.
Hester was pop, and one of my favorite Benny Hester songs. Wow, that is a blast from the past.
Yes, it is.
When God Ran.
Oh, I love that song. And my maiden name is Hester, actually. Little fun fact.
No way.
And yeah, but all of our boys now are total 70s Christian music fans. So my son at college has introduced all of his friends to all these great,
Okay.
Rich Mullins a little bit. He did some rock,
Rich
right?
Mullins is not rock. No, he was singer-songwriter. He was folk. You're making me laugh. I was thinking you were going to go with Petra or Striper or something.
Petra. We'll go with that. My husband's the music guy here. I just listen. I don't know what I'm doing.
Hey, you've got other skills, girl.
I do. Yeah.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at video games?
I think I could be really good. I mean, I was a Miss Pac-Man champion in like my junior high years, so I have potential of being a 10, but I don't play very often.
So what are you?
Okay, I'll go with 7.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay.
I mean, that's like potential if I let myself, but I'd get sucked in and never stop if I started.
Okay, final question is, Monica, Fantasy Island or Hawaii Five-0?
That's tough. I did love Fantasy Island back in the day, but let's go with Hawaii Five-0. We've all been on it, actually. Do you know that fun fact too? Well, we live in Hawaii. It's a small island. They need lots of extras. So we've all been on Hawaii Five-0.
No way.
Yeah. My kids had a few appearances. If you go back, people will email me and be like, is this your son? Is this your husband? Yeah. They had a few small pieces. I was very much in the background. You won't find me.
That is such a fun fact. I feel like we just unearthed a gem there.
Oh, yes. You have to go through all the episodes now and look for us. My son actually killed somebody on one of the shows.
No,
just
he didn't.
Very small part, accidental, but yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Poor sweet boy.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
You'll have to go back now, right? Maybe I'll tell you which episode. If I can find which episode, I'll give it to you and you can put it in show notes.
Please. We will put a link to that in the show notes. I'm making a note right now. Well, that was fun. Okay, so now we know that you live in Hawaii, and that's very unique, not very common. So why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself for my community, help them understand a little bit more about Monica Swanson and who you are, what God has you doing.
All right. Thank you. So, yes, I live in Hawaii with my husband, Dave, and our 4 sons. And my husband and I are both from the Pacific Northwest originally. I'm from a small town called Gig Harbor, Washington, which I love. I'll always consider myself a bit of a Seattle girl at heart. I love sweaters and coffee and a fireplace. My husband's from Oregon. We met. He went to medical school in Portland, Oregon, and then we moved here to Hawaii 18 years ago for his residency program, which I thought would be a 3-year stay. So I kind of looked at it like my 3-year Hawaiian vacation. But by the end, he was like, we're never leaving. And we moved out kind of to the country about 9 years ago. So we're up on the north shore of Oahu, where we have a couple acres and we grow tropical fruit. And we still live a very normal life. I still have dishes and laundry, but it's kind of fun living out in the country. And my sons are all surfers. We homeschool. Oldest son is in college now, and second son just graduated, so he'll be following him. And otherwise, yeah, I've been blogging for 8.5 years at monicaswanson.com and just enjoying sharing our life, all God's blessings, all he's taught me through trial and error and a lot of study and prayer and great mentors. And I'm sharing it in my writing. And that's kind of where I'm at today.
So cool. And it's super cool that you don't just grow things, not just even basic fruit, but tropical fruit. Like what? What do you grow? That's so exciting.
Yeah. Well, the truth is we do get a little jealous this time of year in the summertime because my husband and I love like stone fruits, peaches, and my husband just lives for blueberries. And we don't get any of that here. Like I buy it at Costco and it's usually not great.
Okay.
So it's a little disappointing. But yes, to be fair, we have a lot of apple banana trees. So they're kind of like the tropical banana. They're a little bit firmer. They have a little bit of a tart flavor. They're delicious. We have, I think when we bought our property, we had 100 apple banana trees. So there's a lot.
Do you sell them?
Well, they kind of come and go. We've had a dry spell for a little while, but once we get them, we have so many. So I freeze them, I bake with them, I dehydrate them, we give them, and then we'll go a while without any. So it's kind of hard to sell when it's not super consistent.
Yeah.
We have sold them though to like little fruit stands that make smoothies and things like that. But we also have papaya. We have coconut trees. We have, oh my goodness, we have everything. Star fruit, mountain apples. We actually have a macadamia nut tree. We just had the best mango season we've ever had, which seriously, I don't know. Do you eat mangoes? Do you like mangoes?
I do. I just feel like there's so much fruit that is wasted from a mango, and there's probably a much better way to cut them than I actually know about.
Yeah, they're messy. They are difficult. But whenever I eat one, I feel like I'm in the Garden of Eden. Like this must be how God made fruit to be. They're just, I love mango. So yeah, we have a lot. It's fun. And I'd like to grow vegetables one day, but right now it's just a whole lot of tropical fruit.
And you said salty, not sweet. So I'm really confused by that.
Yeah. I need both.
You do. We all do. So I love the way God just plucked you from the West Coast and popped you down in like dreamland. What is that? That's a pretty cool thing. So how did you come to faith? Like what was your upbringing like? What would that look like between you and Dave? Give us that backstory.
Yeah. So I was raised, I have amazing parents. I'm still super close to them. Wonderful family, kind of in and out of church growing up a little bit. I think that I would say I got saved through a Young Life junior high camp.
Cool.
So yay for Young Life. That's where I remember really making a heartfelt decision. But there were many years after that of some different seasons that I went through before really my faith became solid. I would say that my seed was planted in a pretty shallow soil. And so there were some crazy years through high school and college, and it was when I was in Oregon in graduate school. Another fun fact, I studied physical therapy. I was a sports medicine major in college and went to Oregon to study physical therapy, and I was halfway through my PT graduate program when I met Dave, and we kind of got married quickly. But to continue with the faith story there, God really got my heart. I felt a searching in my heart for a deeper relationship with God. So while I was not walking with him, I would have I would wake up on a Sunday morning after being out doing who knows what the night before. And I would wake up and just be like, I need to go to church. Like I just had this longing for spiritual fulfillment, for something to satisfy what I knew was not being satisfied in the world. And so I would get up and just drive to random churches. And oftentimes I would, find myself in some church with a bunch of 90-year-olds, it seemed like. And finally, the fun story is that my mom told me that one of our home area Young Life leaders' brothers had planted a church in my area. And she said, I think there's a lot of young people there. So one Sunday morning, I got completely lost. This was before iPhones, before Siri could help me find my way. And so I walked in at the closing worship song. I looked up on stage and there was this handsome guy with a guitar. And after church, I met him. His name was Dave Swanson. And I really felt like the Lord said, I've got this guy for you. Where are you going with your life? Where are you headed? And there were a number of other moments that summer. I just feel like God was so good to just be calling me and wooing me, and different situations that had come up. But that was the moment that I started to say, where am I going? What am I doing? I have God has a plan for me, and I'm not following him. So yeah, within a few weeks' time, I got down on my knees and just said, God, I know it's not about the guy. It's about me and you. And I surrender to you. And I want you to be number one, Lord of my life, no going back. And in his goodness and grace, he gave me himself and the guy too.
That's a good package right there.
It is. So that was, I was 25 years old then. And I did drop out of physical therapy school because Dave was starting medical school, and we decided to get married and really focus on just one career. We knew we had some hard work to do. Dave did come from a Christian home, and he had actually walked with Jesus since he was a little boy. So he has a really sweet testimony, has loved God all of his life and never turned away. So we had some growing together to do with our different backgrounds. and so, yeah, he ended up doing medical school, and I just was blessed to be able to stay home. And I did do some teaching for a couple of years, but otherwise I've been able to be home with my boys for the most part.
I think that when God puts couples together who do have really different backgrounds, and which, I don't know that we can all really have super similar, but
Right.
even with that, walked with the Lord, didn't walk with the Lord, made mistakes, pretty, straight and narrow. I think that there's so many blessings and beauty in the mix and the blend of it. It just allows us to see each other and life and different grace in such a different way. I love that the Lord, he wooed you. He wooed you,
He did.
and brought
He
you
did.
to himself in such a personal way. And that's just how awesome our God is. And he is intentional in his love for us. He was, as Christ went to the cross, and just even in meeting us in the everyday. So
Yes.
I know that you've seen this. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I actually have just an encouraging story I like to tell people, because it was just a week or two before I met my husband at church. I was waitressing that summer at a restaurant, and I felt like one of the little moments, and I think it encourages me and my family, and I like to share it. But I was walking by a table, and it was this big round table, and you could tell it was like a grandfather and grandmother, and then, the next generation, and then a bunch of grandkids. And right before they ate, they all gathered hands and bowed their heads to pray. And I'm sure I'd seen plenty of people pray before meals. I mean, I don't think it's very typical, but I'd seen it.
Sure.
But something in that moment, the Lord really stopped me. And it was almost like I couldn't move my feet for a moment. And I stopped and I looked at them. And that was the first time I really sensed the Lord saying, I have this for you in your future, and where are you headed? And that question again, that was preparing my heart, I think, to meet my husband, because I just thought, that's what I want. I want to be the family where one day there will be generations that hold hands and pray for a meal. And so I just get a little, sentimental when we're at a restaurant and we pray for a meal, and I think, who might see this that would be encourred or inspired? So I love that.
I love that too. So God moves you to Hawaii. You have four boys.
Right.
Oh,
four boys.
Goodness.
Yes.
That's a lot of testosterone in one household, sister. Good thing you have the tropical fruit out back to kind of
That's right.
keep the sweet up with you. But it's
That's
amazing.
Right. Plenty of space.
Yeah. But it's amazing how the Lord took you even from when you and Dave met and just started to root you in his word and give you this opportunity to raise this young family. How cool is that of men? Hey friends, Gwen here. I want to talk to you about Bible study. Here's what I know for sure. Everything about your relationship with God will grow stronger when you're intentional to get to know Him more intimately by studying His Word. And the thing is, it doesn't take that long to open your Bible up every day and read. When you have a plan and a community to connect with, Bible study becomes more routine and faith becomes more authentic. But you've got to take the time to prioritize studying the Bible so that you can move forward growing in faith and experience the power, perspective, and peace that God provides and that we all want. Your relationship with the Lord grows stronger when you spend regular time in the Word. And I want to show you how to establish a simple and effective process for studying the Bible. I have a free online Bible study that'll show you exactly how to get started. I'm going to walk you through how to study the Bible using an inductive method that can be done in the comfort of your own home and in a time frame that fits with your personal schedule, even if you've never done a Bible study before in your life. Go to gwensmith.net/psalmadventure. That's gwensmith.net/psalmadventure to sign up for my free online Bible study. And I promise you'll walk away with a clear understanding of how to get started with a personal inductive Bible study plan. Don't wait. Everything about your relationship with God will grow stronger when you're intentional to know and trust Him more by studying the Bible. Years back, you're a writer, you're an amazing communicator, you have I'm going to just throw this out here, you have like a Julia Roberts type likability factor.
Wow, that's a first. Thanks.
Right? Yeah,
I'm gonna write that down.
You're gonna write that down. Tell your husband. You do. You have such a darlingness about you that everyone. I think I can imagine everyone that meets you is like, oh my goodness, I want to eat her for lunch. She's so cute. I want to hang out with her because you are. But I appreciate that.
I'm blushing.
See, yay. But so you get this opportunity to raise, these young boys and whether, the listening community is moms to boys or moms to anybody, we all have opportunity to influence young people around us. But what God has given you is the opportunity to raise young men. As a woman, to raise these young men. And a few years ago, I know that something that happened with your blog is you wrote this blog post and it went viral. Why don't you tell me that story?
Yeah. Well, I had been blogging for about 3 years and just was kind of, really finding my voice, as they say, trying to figure out what I like to write about and what people liked me to write about. I was part of the Mob Society then, so writing for the Mothers of Boys Society, and just kind of sharing everything from my son's surfing career to the, recipes, which I still love to share, from fruit we grow. But I was dabbling a little more in passing on some of the wisdom I felt I had gained. I wasn't super comfortable giving advice early on because I thought, who am I? I'm just another mom. But my boys were getting older and I had learned a few things along the way. So I started writing a few more posts and found that people were really responding to those posts where I was sharing encouragement and advice about raising kids. And then, yes, I wrote a post called, my second son had just become a teenager. So now I had 2 teenage boys, and my post was called What a Teenage Boy Needs Most from His Mom. And I remember my husband was doing a night shift at the hospital, and I just it rolled off my pen so easily. I sent it to him. He's like, it's great. Go ahead and publish it. And the next day I woke up and I was like, whoa, what's going on? There's like not just a few people, but thousands of people were reading it. And each day it kept growing and growing. And I was like, what is going on? I mean, I knew I hadn't invented a new parenting technique. It was not rocket science, but it was really sharing my heart for my teenage boys and what led us there, what I thought were some of the most important things that I was giving my boys as they grew into their young adult manliness. Mm-hmm. And so, that over about a month time, that just continued to grow and really surprised me. And yet it just felt very natural at the same time. I felt like it was what I was meant to do. So it was a really sweet time in my writing life.
Yeah, it's so cool. And especially when you're praying, Lord, just guide my steps, help me to hone and direct my path. He's so faithful to do that. It's just sometimes it shows up in ways that we just don't expect it to.
Yes.
I mean, did you ever think that you would be doing what you're doing now back in the day?
Not at all. I couldn't have imagined. I mean, if I'm honest, I think I dreamed of it. I think that as soon as I started writing, something woke up in me and I thought, this just feels so right. And so, yes, I think deep down I had that dream. I think my husband teases me. He's like, you always knew. I would have never admitted it was a dream, but deep down, I think I had a dream that I would really write and have an audience and have an opportunity to encourage more than just the people right around me. But I'm more surprised than anybody, and I'm more humbled that God would use me. I am so just a normal girl,
Wow.
so imperfect in every way, but just doing my best. And I think that I just love the people in my community. I love to encourage women, and so God's just so good.
Yeah, I'm high-fiving you there, girl, because
Thank you.
absolutely. And I think one of the reasons why, he has given you the megaphone you have is because you are so deliberate to echo his glory and to shout his fame. And so honestly, that's so huge. So obviously there's a big old thing happening now in your life, and it's the upcoming release of your new book, which is called Boy Mom. I mean, how perfect is that? It's the best.
Yes.
Cover's amazing. You got a little surfer boy on there, but it says what your son needs most from you. And so obviously you struck a chord, because I've raised boys. I know the challenges. I mean, and even when they're young adults, because now my two sons, who are the oldest, they're young adults. There's always new layers to that relationship, and I'm looking forward to the changing of the guard with becoming a grandma and all of that kind of fun stuff, and having a different. I mean, we're not there yet, but
yes,
but it is different raising boys than girls.
Sure.
So how in the world did you begin to sit down? What a big task to sit down with a book title like Boy Mom. How did you even begin to start considering what you were going to talk about? What lessons has God taught you as a big boy mom that you think are most important for other boy moms to hear? What has God taught you?
Right. Great question. Yeah, I think that it's kind of funny. Sometimes I've written a blog post with like 10 things of this and 5, and I have a friend who has asked me, like, how do you know those are their 10? And I don't think there's a science to it. In this book, I really had these 12 areas that came to me so quickly, and I prayed over them, and I thought, okay, maybe they need to be replaced with something else. One of them I almost broke into 2, but from the beginning, these 12 areas just jumped out at me so clearly. And so again, a lot of it is just my experience and my work researching and talking to people. But really, I think what God has shown me so much is, for one, the relationship is so foundational. For us to be able to be really real with our boys, I don't think parenting is about being perfect, but it's about being authentic. And they are watching us. They are going to pick up more on what we do than what we say. And so being able to be a mom that is an example to them of somebody that is seeking after the Lord's heart, that really wants to honor God with their life in every way, and then talks about it very naturally. So it's not putting up a front. It's saying, boys, this is what I'm doing. How can I encourage you to do it? How can I help you in this journey that you're on? And so, I am always encouraging moms, you're to be their parent, not their peer. It's not your job to be their best friend. But at the same time, I think we can be really honest and authentic with our kids, boys and girls, as they grow up, and as we model, just showing them an authentic mom who's doing her best.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that 100%. But what I remember, but it's also always different according to the seasons of life. I mean, I'm thinking of that makes a lot of sense for like a tween and a teen and even an older, an older child. But oh my glory, when they are little, it's like, the struggle. Like you're writing the way when you tell stories in your book. I was just like, I'm like, oh, I am aching with you. I am crying that tear with you. I mean, you talk about like when you had your one particular son was quite the wild toddler.
He was. Right. Well, and I love it because now I have this 18-year-old who sits around, he's reading War and Peace. Like he reads books for the fun of it. He is the sweetest, he teaches Sunday school to junior hires. He has a heart of gold. And to all the moms out there that have a little wild child, I'm just telling you, you don't believe me because I didn't believe anyone either. But really, they do grow and they can radically change. So he was my out of control little 2-year-old. He did have some ear issues when when he was young, so a lot of ear infections, and we were like, well, maybe it's the antibiotics. Maybe we wanted to blame something, but he was very physical, very impulsive. We would be out in public and he would just like walk in. I remember being at a Jamba Juice and he just saw this large man standing there and he just ran and just pounded into the man's legs. Like, what are you even thinking? You just don't do that. And yes, we were at a women's Bible study, the story I share in the book that you're referring to, and it was this pastor's wife who I had such respect for and so wanted to impress. And she invited me and I was so excited and I wanted to make friends because I really didn't have any yet. We were newer on the island. And my little guy walks in and as I'm hugging that pastor's wife, he grabs this beautiful little porcelain figurine that I had spotted when we first walked in the door. Just the first thing you see. So obviously a special piece to them, which I found out was a gift from some like pastor in Japan or something. And my son grabbed that thing with his little tiny pudgy hands and he hurled it down their tile hallway and it shattered into many, many pieces. And that was just one of those moments that you don't forget, that you just want to shrink and disappear. And you just think, how could it be so hard? But little boys, they've got a lot of energy. They don't have a lot of self-control. And we must parent them with, yes, grace, with love, but also I needed really to work on boundaries, on discipline, on teaching him the right way and the wrong way. And sometimes keeping him home and not out in public places was the best thing to do in that season.
Now, talk to that, because I know there's a lot of listening women, whether they're grandmas or teachers or moms with these crazy wild children. So speak to that. Like, what in the world do you do? How do you establish boundaries? What were some of the things that were effective for you?
Yes. Well, probably the first thing I learned was they needed to wear off their energy. So we would just load up and go to a park or a field. We lived near like a junior high school that had a big field, and we would go and I would just be like, run, just go, whatever it takes, just go and go. Because I think if you expect a little boy to behave perfectly, to sit still and be quiet and not move, it's just not a realistic expectation. Right. So for me, a lot of it was just learning to give them all the opportunity possible to just move and get the wiggles out. And then a lot of it too was just beginning to train them. I'm just such a believer. I love to talk about training kids because I think sometimes we expect them to behave. We have maybe rules in the house, but we don't really teach them what that looks like. Yes. So I learned from a mentor to set up training sessions. Before we would go to the grocery store, we would talk about how we behave at the grocery store, because having 3 kids in a little cart at the grocery store is never going to be fun.
Girl.
But what if we did a practice session at home where you say, okay, let's pretend we're going to the grocery store. What can you do? What can't you do? What are some of the rules? And because at home, you're in an environment where you can discipline if you need to. You can give a little swat on the hand or put them in timeout or whatever your way of disciplining is. And I know everyone has their favorite way or what they think is right and wrong. But for me, it was teaching them what something should look like before we face that situation. Not expecting them to be born knowing how to behave, because they just don't. So we did a lot of training. Yeah, we did a lot of training. Before someone would come over, I'd say, okay, well, how do you greet them when they walk in the door? Let's stand up. Let's look in them in the eyes and shake their hand and let's practice what that looks like. And they would think we were playing a game, but yeah. And then when they face the situation, they kind of remember, and not always, but a little bit at least, they remember how to act.
I love that. So you run them, you train them. What are some other ways that you can establish, that you learned to establish boundaries? But with the boundaries and the teaching and the training, also it helps them to know freedom. Talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm just such a believer that kids need healthy freedoms, and that the more healthy freedoms, the more they're pushed and stretched and challenged with, true healthy freedoms, the less they're going to go seeking it, especially, and this applies as they get older, and kids just crave adventure. And so as they get older, they can get into trouble. But yeah, when they're young, it's taking them places and letting them dive in the ocean or letting them climb a big hill, letting them experience things that their little bodies crave to feel like they've accomplished something. And I think they get into a lot less trouble when they've had those real opportunities. And I don't think you have to live in a place where there's an ocean or a mountain. I I think you can go to a park and challenge them to go across the monkey bars, or, give them little opportunities at home. How many push-ups can you do? What can you do in the space you have to wear them out, to challenge them, to make them feel like they're doing big things and accomplishing great things. And the more we just think intentionally about doing that, I think the less trouble we have down the road.
Definitely. And I mean, I know because I've had time to look over your book. We're in a group together with other authors and speakers where we kind of do life together in that response. So I know the foundation of everything you're doing is rooted in the truth of the Word of God and in His headship in your home. So talk about how that manifested itself when you're talking about the freedoms and the boundaries. Because boys want to test boundaries. Just obviously girls do too, but in particular, especially with a woman at the head. Because I know a lot of my listeners are single mamas, and they don't have that male in their home. And so, there's a big challenge between that, the gap. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I felt like a single mom for many of those years because my husband was in residency working so much, but I've always had a heart for those that are doing this on their own. I think one thing that was really helpful for us was just reading Bible stories, finding great books that shared stories of young men that did great things. But I mean, the Bible itself has so many great stories of really courageous young men. We would read about, Daniel or David, reading about the men who just had strength because of the Lord, not because they were strong in themselves, and using those examples when they were young. We would watch VeggieTales. We would listen to Adventures in Odyssey. I found as many resources as I could to feed into my boys' little hearts because they wanted to connect with men. They wanted to connect with their identity as a growing young man and who would be strong and courageous. And so using Bible stories was awesome. Yeah. And then as they grew up, same thing, we just finding role models and men to point them to who are doing great things because they have the Lord on their side. So we taught them scriptures. We kept them plugged into Bible studies. And for, when we were near a place that had Awanas, we did all the things we could to just fill their hearts and minds with the Word of God so that they would know that they had a strong, strong Father, that they had strength that didn't come from themselves, but came from a mighty God.
Yeah. And that's so that is foundational, those boundaries. Yes. And then, when you're raising your child, and there's none of us that do it perfectly, but it sure is amazing to know that when we fail, that we've got that grace, that we call on the Lord who is perfect, and He gives us grace. I'm so thankful for grace. So how did that change for you over the years? And you still have a spread. You have the older and the younger, but how has that changed? What are some of the lessons you learned as a mom of tweens and teens?
Sure. Well, I think that the whole foundation of teaching them about the Lord and about Bible stories when they're young really grows into them being at an age where they need more and more outside role models and influence. I think by the time they're in junior high school, my husband and I really look to their youth group, to their youth leaders, to people in our community who could be outside influences, because we know that as much as we matter, they need to see it in people outside mom and dad too. Yeah. So we would get them to youth group every week. We made sure they were plugged into a small group Bible study. And we're blessed that though we live in a small community, we just have some great men in our church and in our community who took them under their wing, and they would meet with their youth leader each week and begin to be discipled. And then that grew into reading great books and listening to podcasts and all these things that really began to shape them. So now they're at a place where they're telling me about, you've got to check out Ravi Zacharias' latest podcast. You have to check out this book. And they're reading C.S. Lewis books that I didn't know were even written. Yes. And they're just bypassing me because they have this hunger for the Lord that grew over time and years.
I love that. I know we've experienced that same thing, and it is such a blessing. It is such a blessing. It is so cool. But it's amazing. I know. How have you handled as a boy mom? How have you handled technology? Because when the kids are little, they want to be playing the games and with the iPads and mommy's phone, and we're allowing. I mean, as a society, and I had did it when my kids were little. Sometimes we'll put on the movie, the TV, all of the tech. What have you done in terms of a boy mom to handle technology over the years?
Right. How many hours do we have here? This is a loaded topic.
I know it.
I wish there was an easy answer. Oh, how I wish. And certainly I did spend more time on my one chapter on technology than any other chapter in the book, because it's so hard and there's always something new. Yeah. It's like as soon as we think we've got it figured out, it's like, what is this new app? What is this new? So fortunately, I think biblical principles are across the board. I think that we don't have to have a rule for every single thing that comes up. I think dealing with the heart first and the character. In fact, my just turned 20-year-old son and I were talking about one of the younger brothers and is he ready for this or that? And he's like, Mom, it's a heart issue. Like, you can get all the filters you want, but it's about his heart. And I was like, well, you wise young man, you're right.
I love it.
But I think that truly, the blessing too of living in Hawaii, and I think everyone, no matter where you live, I don't think there's excuses, because I think we all have somewhere we can go, but we can push our boys out the door and say, be outside. I know when my husband and I lived in Oregon, we would go to an indoor gym that had like rock climbing walls. And even in the winter, we found ways to be active. Yeah. But I think keeping boys busy doing things that don't involve a device is one of the greatest things you can do, is just to truly keep them busy and occupied with great things. So that's my number one tip, is there's so many things we can do that don't have rules. Like, I'm not going to limit how much you run or how much you read or how many hills you climb. I'm going to there's things you can do as much as you want to. But then certainly we do need boundaries. We do need to set rules. And I think every household it's going to look differently. But for us, we have primarily said, most days of the week, there are no games at all going on around here. We just don't, my husband just has no tolerance for gaming at all. Yeah. I don't think that's for everyone. Sometimes I think families have a system where you might be able to earn your game time but I think that my son bought a used Xbox, I think when he broke his foot or his arm. He's broken both. I forget which it was, but occasionally we'll pull that out when they have friends over on a weekend and it's raining, we'll pull it out for birthdays or something. But for the most part, we just don't use much in the world of games. And
what? Let me just stop you there for a second, because you just gave me a good idea. So I wonder how much more productive it would be if we didn't always leave our Xboxes, our PlayStations plugged in. But just what you said, okay, put it away in the closet, so that if a kid wants to use it, he actually has to take it out, set it up, and put it all together. That would be kind of a small hindrance. I just wonder that I've never even thought of getting it out.
We actually do.
Away? It's my question.
That's what we do. We actually put it in a box, and my husband sticks it way up in a closet because he just can't stand seeing that thing. But of course, there's games on phones. There's games everywhere, and we don't have a whole lot of rules. We mostly just keep them off of it when we can, and we have evolved when it comes to cell phones and social media. My first son's got cell phones younger, at 13 and I think 14. But then with my third son, we're looking at him going, we don't think it's going to be helpful to you. So he's 15 and still has his flip phone. Yeah. And, again, that's not for everyone. We try to look at our kids very individually and say, what are you ready for? What are you ready for? Yeah. And fair doesn't always happen, and because they've got different personalities, different goals. My third son is a surfer, and he took the state championship this year, so that was incredible. Wow. But at the end, he thought his reward might be that he would finally get a smartphone. Like, he had that in his head, and he was so disappointed when we're like, what? Where did that come from? And he's like, well, I guess I thought that would be my reward. And my husband was like, listen, there was one kid at that contest that doesn't have a smartphone, and there's one kid that took the state championship.
Right.
And he's like, let's keep doing what we're doing, because those kids they're all just sucked into all the games, and in between heats, they go home, they're on their phones. And he's like, what good would that do you? So it's an individual thing.
It is. In fact, I had a conversation just last week with a daughter figure in my life, and she actually has 3 boys and is pregnant with her 4th. So shout out to Brooke. But we were sitting talking about this, and we were talking about how she works part-time, and she was like, how do I get the babysitter to actually do things with them instead of I think she just puts on a TV the whole time. I'm like, okay. So we actually had a great conversation, and I said, okay, because it's been so long since that was my reality. reality.
Right.
I said, what I did when my kids were little is I actually had a Word document. This is so nerd of me. I had a Word document, and literally it had a schedule. It was, 8 a.m. through 5. And it was like, 8 a.m. through 9, 9, whatever, it's wake up and eat breakfast. And then it would be 9 to 10:30 is active playtime. And that's what I called it. And that's what you're saying. Like there's no limits on active playtime, But so then, because my babysitter might have been a 17-year-old who had never had children, she'd be like, what in the world do we do? And so then off to the right in a column, I had active playtime options. You can, if it's, you can go to the pool, you can take a walk, you can go down to the lake, you can go out and play on the swings, you can play Tetris, you can play, they can color, you can, but it has to be at the kitchen table. You can do Play-Doh, but everything has to be put away. But you literally, I had a list of what active playtime looked like, what you could have music time, you could play with, there's so many things. And it was like, oh my word. So I never let my babysitter decide what shows my kids were going to watch, because it was really not an option. And so then, and so for me with a young, and she was like looking at me like mind blown. I never thought of that. And I'm like, yeah, because your 17-year-old sitter does not know she doesn't know how to be a mom.
And isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, there was a time where that would have been all babysitters did, right?
Yeah.
But now our world has changed so much that the expectation is just different.
But honestly, when I was a babysitter, my default, and I think our defaults generally are, is, hey, let's watch a movie.
Totally.
Let's just sit here. You be good and let's watch this movie. But having a plan for whether it be a sitter, a grandparent, or even just for yourself, a structured day for me with boys was beneficial. I had all 3 of my kids in 3.5 years. So it was like herding cats and trying to nail Jell-O to a tree a lot of times, It was like, oh my goodness, because someone was always crying, someone was always mad, someone was always tired, and someone was always hungry. So it was just, it was a thing.
Crazy town. Right.
But, and so it became easier though, because there were 2 different opportunities for screen time for them each day. It was a half an hour each time. And it was okay. So from 10:30 to 11 is when the kids can watch either, 3-2-1 Penguins or VeggieTales or whatever, or Doc McStuffins, one of those. And then, 11 to 12 is where everyone's picking up toys and you're preparing lunch. And then for lunch, and I would literally, I am such a nerd. I had a list for that too. I'd be like, they can have peanut butter and jelly. They can have, mac and cheese. They can, you can make them eggs and toast. They can have a yogurt. They can have a banana, an apple, and do this. And so, and it was just, once you establish kind of like, this is the vision for our day.
Yes.
It makes it easier just for everybody. And that
I totally agree. And that's one thing I'm not good at, is thinking that one step ahead. I want to just wake up and a day to just go smooth. And I forget often that really having that just little bit of forethought can make all the difference in the world. And I find the same thing with my boys. If you don't tell them what to do, the default, my 9-year-old will try to grab my phone and sneak off somewhere and find a little game on there. And so if I do have written down, here's your 2 options today, either it's, chores or the other chores. No, that's been this week. But if you give them the option of 2 different things, they're going to choose one of them because they have to. But if you don't have that established, then there's going to be defaults that are not ideal.
It's true. And honestly, it helped me as much as it did any sitter or and grandparents, we just got to let them. We can't, there's things we can't control. They're one of them. I know that a bunch of listeners are going, come on, preach that sermon, because, we have to honor them. And we can certainly make requests but at the same time, we're just kind of, it's kind of, that's a whole nother topic.
That is a whole nother topic. And we moved to an island far away from all extended family. So my parents now come for a few months a year and we love that. But I was pretty pretty on my own when the boys were young. So
that's totally cool. One of the things that you talk about and that you've learned and implemented is this unexpected value of no. So how can that be a value?
And I am such a believer in this one. I think that so often we feel some kind of pressure to say yes to our kids. And this goes across the board. The example I often use is, for sleepovers. I think kids sometimes just ask us if they can stay over with someone because everybody else is, or because somebody invited them. And maybe deep down in their heart, they don't really feel ready for a sleepover, but they ask anyway. And I think that so often when we say no to something, there is a relief in our kids' hearts because they know deep down that they're not ready. And sometimes they'll fake it or they'll be bummed initially, but eventually they will realize that was for their good. I think the same goes when kids are teenagers and everybody's going out, getting into trouble, and it's a Friday night and they're like, well, can I go too? And I'm not going to do what they're doing. If you just say no, like, hey, it's family movie night, they might get a little upset at first. But the truth is, I think there's a whole lot of teenagers out there that feel a lot more secure at home, having pizza, watching Netflix with the family than they would out in a situation that they do not feel ready for. And I think we're doing them a big favor when we trust our gut, when we, as if possible, mom and dad together make some decisions and say, this is and this isn't okay. And I think they get such security in having parents who have a solid yes or a solid no. And that's just something my husband and I talk a lot about, is when we are firm with our yeses and firm with our nos, it gives our kids a sense of security. So I tell parents, say no more. Say yes a lot, but when you know that no is right, just say no.
And what do you do with the situation where you've got the chaos in the minivan and the kids just want to watch a movie, or they want to borrow your phone? And what if they're really strong-willed? What do you do?
Oh, that's tough. I got a couple of those, and they came later. It's my last two. We do have a couple of strong-willed kids, and we use what I call the appeal process. It is kind of my favorite thing to refer to. And that's where, I think kids need to honor their parents. I think it's biblical, honor your mother and your father. Yes. And it comes with a promise that you'll live long in the land your Lord has given you. And so I remind my boys how important it is that they submit to our authority. But I also know that kids want to be heard, and sometimes they have a really good argument. And so we just say, listen, if you're willing to just accept a no, if you're willing to obey us, then you think through your argument. If you really feel like you have a strong case, come to us, wait a moment, make sure that you're showing us an obedient heart, but then come to us and just say, listen, I have an appeal. And we don't want them to abuse it. So it's not like something you can do 10 times a day, but just say, here's the reason why I think this makes sense today. And I have agreed that I will listen to them and hear their case. And oftentimes they end up getting their way because I think they have a really good case. But that's kind of the process we use. We say no, and we offer them the chance to appeal. And it's worked quite well for the most part.
Okay, that is brilliant. And not only does it allow honor to prevail, which is biblical, but it causes them to be strategic thinkers.
Yes.
And that's so huge. I mean, my goodness, that's going to help. That helps to develop. And obviously, that's not gender specific. That could be for girls, too. That'd be great.
Oh, for sure. I was one of those growing up, for sure.
Yes. But I love that. It's like the burden of proof is on you, buddy.
Right.
Show me why this would add value to your life and to this.
Right. And oftentimes they stop and think about it and they got nothing. They're like, sorry, I give.
I love it. So when you went to contract for Boy Mom, this book, and started talking about it, I know that one of the experiences in my life is when there's a real strong burden for something that you go in pursuit of Jesus, of truth, but also of revelation. So I know what surprised you the most when you were writing this book and really praying through this message. What did you learn that surprised you, or what that you feel is it's just really hit your heart in a fresh way?
Oh, great question. I think that through the whole process, and books take years. That's one thing I didn't know before.
Yes, they do.
It kind of feels like I've been writing this book since I can remember.
Right.
But I think that maybe just through the community, both on my blog and as I've shared the book now with a wider audience, is just how many of us so much want to raise good and godly boys, but how much pressure there is in the culture to really allow our kids to start to compromise in little areas that we begin to normalize.
Like what?
And so I think technology is a big one. And again, though I will not give, any hard, fast rules, I think it's something worthy of prayer and thought and figuring out what's best for your family. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of parents just have thrown up their hands on that one and just said, everyone's doing it. I can't stop it. So I'm just going to let it go. That's just one example. But also I think just a lot of areas that kids might just tell their parents that they're going to be the weird one if they don't A, B, or C, whether it's be on social media, whether it's go to the party, whether it's listen to certain music, or even, how many families just their kids just start to cuss and speak disrespectfully, and parents are just like, it's just the way kids are these days.
Right.
And I just am such a believer in saying, no, you don't have to do what the world tells you is normal. You don't have to accept the things that people say when your kid's a teenager. They're just going to do these things. They're going to, they all go through a rebellious stage. I mean, that's one of those myths that I'm like, heck no, let's not say okay to these things that we're told that kids just have to turn away. They have to quit talking to mom. Oh, they all, listen to their friends more than their parents. No, my boys listen to their parents and love their parents because we had that expectation. I think they're really going to fulfill whatever you expect of them. For the most part. There's always, there's some exceptions there. But if we believe that we're going to raise kids who are going to stay in a great relationship with us, and that we believe the best for them, that we give them credit that they are thinkers and they're smart and they're going to make wise choices, and we speak those words to them. I know who you are. You are my son, and you are called by God to follow him. And I know that you're a young man that will choose wisdom. We speak life into them. They're going to rise up to what we expect of them. Yeah. So I think that it's been a sad revelation for me to see how many people, truly well-meaning Christian moms just feel overwhelmed by the task and like maybe there isn't hope. And I just want to scream and shout, yes, there is hope and you can do this. And please don't give up, because I've seen it done. And believe me, I'm no perfect mom and my kids are doing really well. So with a little intention and a lot of prayer, you really can raise great sons even in the world today.
Yeah. So what do you say then to the mom who's at her wit's end, who does want to give up? She's so frustrated because she has loosened the reins too much over the years. She has allowed him to be disrespectful, to have ownership of his own iTunes account or Snapchat or all of the things that, and now it's like, how do you put the toothpaste back in the tube? What advice do you have for that mom?
I am so glad you asked, because this is so much my heart as well. I know there's a lot of moms out there. I hear from them every day. And to that mom, I just want to say God has a different story for every one of us and every one of our kids. And he can redeem anything. He can turn something beautiful, and it is never, never too late. And so my first piece of advice is always to stop and pray. And if you feel a conviction in your heart that you have made mistakes, which we all have, I mean, every day I sit before the Lord and am reminded of all of my mistakes and his goodness in forgiving me. So I think just recognizing, okay, Lord, these are some areas that I think I've blown it. Now, can you help me, fix what's broken? Mm-hmm. And then the best piece of advice I have is to talk to your kids real authentically and honestly about it. Kids know we're human. They hit a certain point where, sorry, mom, if you ever thought you were faking them out. By the time they're teenagers, they know you're not perfect. Exactly. And so to just own it and just to say, listen, and I've done this in many areas where I've said, this is an area I have not been on my game. I didn't even realize, whatever it might be. I was busy. I was distracted. I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. I'm struggling right now, but I love you so much and I want God's best for you. And because of that, I think we need to make some radical changes, maybe small changes, but we need to make some changes. Mm-hmm. And because I love you so much, I'm going to be firm on this. I'm going to be your mom, not your best friend, but I really want to help you make some choices so that you reach the full potential that God has for you, because I do believe he has a purpose and a plan for your life. And I think being honest, now, are they going to, sign up and stand up and say, okay, mom, I'm on board?
Perfect. Maybe. I never want to play another video game again.
Exactly. Yes. They may not do that, but if they see your heart and they see you consistently following that, what you said, you mean, you follow through with your actions and you continue to pray for them and speak life to them and believe in them and set some strong boundaries for them, even when it's hard, eventually they're going to realize that it is out of love that you are doing all of these things.
It is.
Yes.
Well, but the thing that really sits well in my heart that you were sharing is when you own it, it's about speaking life to the heart of that child, whether they're 6 or 16. It's saying, I did not handle this well. I want you to forgive me. I'd ask that you would forgive me. I want to serve you best. I want God's best for your life. And when that's the narrative of the story, I want you to succeed. I want you to grow in the design. Now, if it's a rebellious teenager, even if they don't believe in God, if they hear that your heart for them is rooted in love and it's that you want good for them, even if they don't act like they're listening, I believe that they would be. But I know, I just know that there's some moms out there listening saying, but I'm divorced, and at my husband, or at the ex's house, we have a broken household situation, and he doesn't parent like I do, and he lets him get away with everything. And so, what can a woman do, who has only the influence in her household being whether what do you do then?
Sure. No, I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because I have such a strong conviction in my heart that kids are watching and they're thinking, and if you are in that situation, maybe not today, but eventually they're going to look at the two different scenarios, the mom's house, the dad's house, the two different styles of living. If you are pursuing God in your heart, in your life, in your home, in the way you live, it will shine. We cannot, hide our light under a bushel. God's light will shine. They will see, and there is no doubt in my mind that they're going to know which way is right. It's righteousness that will shine out. It's not you, it's God in you. And I think that any kid that's living, he might have more fun at dad's right now, but when he stops and looks at where truth is, where is light, where is righteousness, there will be no doubt in his mind that what mom is doing is the consistent truth being spoken and being lived out. And sometimes you just got to trust, and you just got to keep doing it, and you just got to pray over it, and you got to keep talking to your son, and don't freak out and panic, because sometimes it takes some time, but God will do the work.
Okay, but let's throw some skin on that. So she's in that situation. She's praying for her kid. What type of conversations can she have that cause the security that a child longs for, and yet without acquiescing to the manipulative forces of children, which can happen? What type of conversations? What kind of things can she say and do?
Right. And also not wanting to speak poorly about, the other person in the situation, because we all have different personalities. It's going to look different for everyone, but I'm going to say just being real authentic about what you're doing. Listen, I'm praying for you every day, son. Here's some things that God's shown me. I think these are some of the character qualities I see in you. And I want to encourage you to continue to grow in this area and that area, speaking out. Even if it's a seed, I say, it may not be fully developed, but if you see a seed of integrity, if you see a seed of truth, if you see a little bit of honesty coming out, and just say, I saw how hard it was to be honest in this situation, but that is a godly character quality. And I'm going to encourage you to keep growing that, because you know what? Not only does it honor God, but that's going to take you far in life. That's going to help you in jobs. That's going to help you in relationships. So just speaking truth to them.
Catch them doing something right.
Catch them doing something right. And then also just, again, sharing what you're learning. I mean, for me, sometimes it's, in my devotions today, I realize that this is an area I need to grow in, and I'll just say it straight out to my boys, and they may or may not be interested that day, but I have a feeling they're going to remember that. They're going to remember what it looks like to be somebody seeking truth and seeking a godly life. And otherwise, just being honest, hey, I know when you're at dad's, you get to play games all the time, and that might be fun right now. But here, I want you to listen to what this article says about games, just sharing truth. It says that kids who play games a lot are not developing social skills, or are not, they're failing in this area, that, and saying, just, I care about you. I care about your future. And I'm just going to tell you right now that you may get by with this when you're in a different situation than at my house. But I really hope that you'll think about this. So just presenting them. And again, that's where you can bring in other people. Hey, here's a podcast. I will pay you $5 to listen to this podcast. I will, if you want to play that game when you're at my house, how about if you first read this article? Like, whatever it takes to get kids tuned into things that are going to develop their character, pay them to read. Whatever you have to do, just get them plugged into places and things and resources that will help them grow.
Yes, that's so great. I love it.
That's a lot.
It is
Sorry,
a lot.
That's a lot.
But you know what? It's a lot, but there's just no simple solution, but just these ideas that we can generate mom to mom and woman to woman. It's amazing how there's synergy in that. And that's, that's, we can think, okay, well, maybe it's really that I don't reveal the heart behind the why, behind the what. It's so easy for us to say, put the game down. But if we sit down and take 90 seconds and say, we're going to put the game down and here's why.
Yes.
I want God's best for you.
For sure.
It's the heart. If we will, and it's sometimes so hard because we get so busy but I think that the heart behind, the why behind the what can really become so kryptonite,
Yes.
And so what's cool, I would like you to take some time to just pray over all of the listeners, because we're all influencers, whether we're boy moms or not. And so much of what we talked about is applicable, no matter what, across the spectrum. But we want God's best for our children. That's universal. So it's a matter of seeking his heart. But what I love about this book, though, Monica, is that you put together really practical wisdom and the tools at the end of each chapter, because, we didn't talk much about format, but the tools at the end of each chapter are life-giving for the reading mom. You give her an opportunity to have reflection, personal reflection, with very thought-provoking questions in the Make It Personal section. And then you have some very practical suggestions for whatever the topic is. So here's some ways you can implement this in your home and with your family. And so I'm grateful for how you've taken that burden of your heart and kind of opened it up to a whole nother generation of moms. Absolutely. But I know, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know for me, when I read a book, I love encouragement and warm fuzzies, but usually I'm like, tell me what to do. I just want practical help. So my heart was to make it as practical as I could.
I love it. So I know that there's a lot of thoughts racing in the hearts and minds of all of our listeners. So I'd love for you just to end our time together by praying for each of the Graceologie listeners today.
Oh, it would be my honor. Thank you so much. Oh, Lord Jesus, I just thank you for everybody listening right now. I thank you for the heart in them that made them even begin to listen to today's episode. I thank you for the families that they represent, the children, the marriages, the friends or the influence. Maybe there's teachers listening or somebody that has some impact on younger lives. And God, I just pray for a spirit of hope to rise up, just to realize, Lord, that whatever things are like today does not have to be the full story, that you are a good God. You redeem things that we bring to you. It is your pleasure to bless us with your goodness when we ask, Lord. And we are all your children, even though we're the moms, we're also your children. I pray that everyone listening, Lord, would just consider, would stop today and just take a minute to consider what maybe their next step is, what you would have them do next. If there's a relationship that needs to be repaired, or if maybe there is an area they could just pick it up a little bit and be more intentional in their parenting, in their influence. If there's an area they're like, oh my goodness, I only have this child in my care for so many years and I don't want to waste it. I want to make it count. God, what's next? I pray that you would speak individually to each person what is next, because it's going to be different for each of us. It may be setting a limit on technology. It may be having a conversation you haven't been able to have. It may be speaking life into that child or friend, whoever it might be. Lord, I pray that some specific next step would come to each person's heart and mind. I know, Lord, that you You want to bless us with good things. And I think about just Romans 8:32 that says, he who did not spare his own son, but delivered him over for us all, how will he not also with him freely give us all things? Mm-hmm. God, you're a God that loves to hear our prayers, and you love to answer our prayers. And so I pray, God, that women listening would not hesitate to come to you and just ask, and that you would answer those prayers mightily, and that you would give hope, that you would give peace, and that you would just guide each of us as we are doing our very best in this broken world and our broken selves to serve you and honor you in our parenting and in all we do. So we commit it all to you, Lord, and I just thank you again for everyone listening. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. The book is Boy Mom, What Your Son Needs Most from You. And my guest has been Monica Swanson. It has been so nice to have you on this show, Monica. Where can my community connect with you? What's the best place online?
The best place. My website is home base to everything. So you can always find me at monicaswanson.com. And there will be a / podcast to my Boy Mom podcast, / Boy Mom book to find the book. It's all there, though, on the homepage. So you'll find everything at my website. I do love Instagram. So come follow me at Monica Swanson _. Then on Facebook and Twitter, I'm still my old name, which was the Grom Mom, the word the, and then GROMMOM. And that's a throwback to 8 years ago when this all began. And so, yep, I'm out there everywhere, and I love to connect. I love to meet new friends. So please say hi if you track me down.
That sounds perfect. Thanks so much, Monica.
Thank you so much, and aloha.
Isn't she just wonderful? Such a good conversation and so practical. Be sure to visit Monica online and connect with her on social media. Today's show was edited by Chad Shuping, and the music is by premiumbeat.com. If your church hosts women's events, or if you have questions, comments, or topic suggestions, I love hearing from you. Send me a message or a speaking inquiry right from my website at gwensmith.net. All of the links and the show notes from today's episode can be found at gwensmith.net/Graceologie. That's gwensmith.net/Graceologie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, if you haven't already subscribed, please open up your podcast app and click that subscribe button. Subscriptions and reviews on whatever podcast app you listen to make a huge difference to those of us who are working hard to bring you these shows. And be sure to connect with me on social media. I'm at Gwen Smith Music on every platform. And the show is at Graceologie with an IE on every platform as well. Now get out there and have a beautiful, grace-filled day.